I want to speak to the dirty officers out there. I want to speak to these rookies that are just getting involved in the game, or people that's been in for a little while and they want to be a part of these different cliques and they want to be accepted by them. All those CEOs that were involved in that untimely death of Robert Brooks out of New York, I think it was Marcy Correctional Facility, all of those or majority of those officers are going to cooperate with the government, and they're going to tell on each other to save their own behinds and to get the best deal possible. I don't care what people hear about this thin code, thin blue line of silence. There's no such thing as a real blue code of silence. Now, as I said in the previous video, about the initial killing of Tyree, not Tyree. I said Tyree because he's going to be mentioned in this video, but from Robert Brooks, right? When I initially did that video, I made it clear that maybe little knickknack stuff that goes on. Some people, they may put the cuffs on a little too tight, or, they may come in early, they may leave early, and all this other little knickknack stuff that, they don't expect anything major to happen. There might be a thin wall of silence, blue wall of silence concerning those minor things, right? But when it comes to stuff where you can literally lose your freedom and be sent to prison for a long time and stripped away from your family, all bets are off, and they will tell on each other. And I'm going to provide you a few examples to prove my point, because I know I got coworkers that will watch this video or watch my previous videos or watch me on TikTok, and they may feel a certain way. Oh man, he's a rat, he's a snake, he's a snitch. I'm keeping it real, and I'm going to sufficiently demonstrate there is no such thing as a real blue wall of silence, because when your butt is on the line and you are looking at doing time in prison, it is everybody for themselves. It is like the Hunger Games. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this. I'm going to provide sufficient examples to show you what it is. I'm going to show you some more recent examples and some recent I can't even talk. I'm going to show you some recent examples and some not so recent examples to prove my point. Now, before I get into it, let me say this, right? Because I'm not going to come on here and be naive. Is there a certain thin blue wall of silence that goes on? Absolutely. You see that all the time in the news. You see it in different press releases. Absolutely, there is a certain thin blue wall of silence. But what I'm trying to get you guys to understand is that thin blue wall of silence only goes so far. Now, also, let me do a disclaimer, because I'm not self-incriminating. I don't get involved in that stuff. And if you've seen some of my videos, you know what kind of time I'm on. But just, it's annoying, right? Because people swear up and down. And again, to an extent, they are correct. There is a thin blue wall of silence. But again, as I'm going to explain in this video, when you're looking at doing a gang of time and you're going to be stripped away from your wife, your girlfriend, your kids, and all that stuff, all bets are off and everybody is fair game. Now let's get into this. Okay, so in this situation, I want to start with those 5 disgraceful black officers out of Memphis that killed that young man, Tyree Nichols in Memphis, right? Here's one of the officers. I'm trying to see what his name is. You can look to see his name. Okay, Emmett Martin III. Now, here's a situation, right, where these officers, right, they did their thing. They did their thing. They beat him up. He ended up dying. And, I'm sure they've done that before with this certain specialty group or whatever that they do, right? Special missions group. They all thought they were going to be okay. They all thought nothing was going to happen. It was going to be business as usual. You just keep quiet about it. I'll keep quiet about it. Well, here you can pause this, make the screen big to read it. But here you go. This officer, he testified against the other officers. Again, when they did the background on this, I don't know, what was it, the Scorpion group or something like that? When they did those different segments on them, you start finding out that there were other issues of alleged abuse going on. And again, when you watch clips from the video where Tyree Nichols was, taken out, it was very disturbing. I couldn't even watch the whole thing, but you can definitely tell that was not a group or a clique that just started doing that stuff that night. So even though they were a clique and they was doing all this unconstitutional stuff, violating people's civil rights, things of that nature, once they finally got caught up to them and they were looking at facing some serious time, the officers start telling on each other. And as you can see with this, let me back out of it because you should have already gotten what you needed. Once the heat was on and they had to face that, I think they had to go before a grand jury or whatever. Once that happened, the officers started telling. Now, let me zoom back in because I want to point out something that was said. So it says, Mr. Martin's testimony has pierced the officer's code of silence and stripped the case to its core, whether a jury will believe that violence and lies amounted to a federal crime. As you can see right there from the case, the thin blue wall that people think is just this massive thing that never gets breached, it gets breached when the rubber meets the road. Now, let me move on to the next example. All right. So for this one, this was a press release by the Department of Justice, Department of Public Affairs. And this was released Friday, December 27, 2024. And it involved a situation between or at a Federal Bureau of Prisons facility. And you can read this stuff for yourself, but essentially it says a female officer reported to a person that an inmate was engaged in exposing himself in a sexual manner. And so the lieutenant, who was the one that ended up, pleading guilty, he allegedly, can't say allegedly because, it happened, but he conspired with another officer to, rough him up and to teach him a lesson. And so what happened? Now, get this screenshot because I'm going to go back to my thing. Okay, so in this case, right, you got to read it. I'm going to go to the second part, but essentially, there was the officer that took an order from a lieutenant to go beat up a dude because he inappropriately exposed himself to somebody else. Now, in there, let me go back out so you can see it. In here, it says that co-conspirator number one, right? So that was the officer. So when they say co-conspirator number one, you was cooperating. So the officer that took the orders from the lieutenant, from what I understand, he cooperated, with the government to go after the lieutenant. And I'm sure this is not the first time that lieutenant and that officer had these arrangements. But it also says in it that other officers that were nearby or seen it or were involved, they testified and cooperated as well. So again, here it is. You have a situation where that's not the first time that something like that has happened. Screenshot this for yourself so you can read it later on. Let me go back to my thing. Yeah. So in this situation, here's another situation where you're dealing with a culture of abuse. You're dealing with all this kind of stuff, right? And people, they pound their chest. They think they're hard. They think they're gangster because, we do our stuff and we don't tell. Like I said, all bets are off when you're looking at going to prison. It's fun and games when you get away with it. But when it catches up to you, as you've seen with this case, and let me go back so you can see this was recent. This was a press release from Friday, December 27, 2024. And that you can see that other people, they cooperated. They told on them. And even the officer that took the orders from the lieutenant cooperated because it shows as co-conspirator number one. So again, they're going to tell. Now let's move on to the next example. All right, now here goes a situation from LASD, LA Sheriff's Department, right? That's obviously LA County, Los Angeles County, California. Now here it is. This was from 2013, but since then there's been a bunch of other cases that have taken place where you had deputies involved in misconduct. Certain deputies were telling on each other, and it just expanded like a spider web into other things, which of course eventually, I don't know if it was stemming from this case, but there were other cases that ended up landing the former LA Sheriff, Under Sheriff Paul Tanaka, and the former LA Sheriff himself, Lee Baca. They did prison time in the feds because of this. But you should be able to get that screenshot to see what it's talking about, and I'm going to talk about it just for a second, right? Now, with all of these indictments that you see, let me go back to it so y'all can see real quick. with this, right? 18 charged as a result of a federal investigation into corruption and civil rights abuse by members of LA County Sheriff's Department. Now, I remember when this, because I'm in Southern California. So I remember when all this stuff was going on. Screenshot it, save it. Let's get up close and personal here. Now, I remember when all this stuff was going on because I live in Southern California and it was just all over the news. And during this incident, and then the other incidents, whether it be the LASD gangs, all that kind of stuff, you had officers that were cooperating with the government to try to save their hide. And I'm not going to go into all the details because I didn't go over all the paperwork, right? I did not go over all the paperwork. But even in this investigation with these 18 LASD years ago sheriff's deputies, they were telling on each other. They were providing information to the government trying to save their hide. How do you think, like, for instance, right, with Paul Tanaka, he was the former undersheriff for the LA Sheriff's Department, and Lee Baca, the former sheriff. They had officers, their own officers, turning against them, right? And then you had other situations where I didn't mention it or I didn't show it here, where you had sheriffs, LA Sheriff's Department deputies that were being hemmed up and they was being busted upside the head for violating inmate civil rights. And those cases were able to materialize and they were able to gain wings and fly because you had other deputies and other staff members that were cooperating. So I know you hear all these stories about, oh yeah, the LASD gangs and Google LASD gangs and this, that, and the other. And some people on the outside and even people on the inside in the department that are not involved in that, right? The smart ones, they don't get involved in that stuff. But even in that culture where they thought they could do whatever they want, they thought as long as you don't say nothing and I don't say nothing, nobody will ever find out. Well, you know that saying, right? They effed around and found out. Y'all know I don't curse, so I'm not going to say the full thing. But even in all those different investigations, you had deputies within the LA Sheriff's Department that were part of that culture, and they cooperated because that's how it works. Now, let me move on to the next one. This might be the last one. This is a huge one. All right. And this one is huge, right? This was an article that came out in 2022 by the AP. And this was involving the prison staff didn't know what does it say? The prison staff didn't know much about the new acting warden. Then they say he made a bizarre and disturbing confession years ago about beating inmates. And the AP report was titled, Prison Boss Beats Inmates Climbed Ranks. Now, here it is, right? This is another culture. This was about the cowboys at Florence, right? Federal Complex, Florence. And I remember when I was taking, because I was taking psychology, right? That was my undergrad, psychology with an emphasis in criminal justice or criminology. I can't even remember. But anyways, during the course of my undergrad, we had to study about this, the cowboys, because this was a big deal, right? You had these COs, right? That they were involved in these messed up things where they were like beating inmates and abusing black inmates and torturing them and doing all kind of crazy stuff. Well, this individual, right, who rised up really, really high in the ranks of the Bureau of Prisons, he was one of the original cowboy members. And you can see right here where, you can screenshot it for yourself. Now, let me move on to the second slide so you can see some of the allegations. And again, you can screenshot it, pause it, whatever. But it says, the different bullet points, you can read it for yourself, right? And it says at least 11 guards connected to the cowboys were charged with federal crimes, but not Hinkle. And then here goes the other part. In response to detailed questions from the AP, Hinkle conceded that he beat inmates as a correctional officer, but said he has made significant changes in his life since then, including seeking professional treatment and quitting alcohol. He said he was disciplined, a 2-week suspension for failing to report abuse of an inmate, and and that he cooperated fully with investigators. Did you hear what I said? That he fully cooperated with investigators. You can go read this AP report if you want, if you think I'm lying. Here it is. You have a dude that was involved in this culture of abuse He was involved in this culture of violating inmates' civil rights. He did other things on the streets. Even though he was beating up black inmates and torturing them and doing all that kind of stuff, he still rose through the ranks. And the bureau director, she stood by him. She said, hey, he's a changed man. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. He's new. He's a born-again Christian. She didn't say all that, but I'm just exaggerating. But even with all of that, he was involved in that stuff. How did he get out of it? How was he able to still climb the ranks? It's because he cooperated. Again, that's the theme of this video. It may seem as though officers might be in the cool kids club because they do their shady stuff. You know, they do it amongst themselves. They have their clique. They roll tight. But look at me. Look in my eyes. Look in this camera. Come up close because I need to tell you this because some of y'all still won't believe me. Get in close because some of y'all still won't believe me what I'm going to say. If you join one of those cliques, if you join one of those, whatever you want to call it, and you're engaged in this type of activity, just know that you are not safe. And if you guys get caught, which there's a good chance, you all will tell on each other. I don't care what oath you guys took. I don't care what kind of initiations y'all took. I don't care if y'all had an initiation where all of y'all jumped in the shower together and played swords and put your hands in the middle like a team and say hoorah, whatever. I don't care what initiations or what type of binding agreements you guys had. Once it gets to the point to where you are looking at losing your freedom and being locked away, all bets are off. And every single person that's in that group that did dirt with you, it is going to be like the Hunger Games, and they're going to tell on each other, period. Now, I just showed you several examples. And this is why I say I know these officers from the, Marcy Correctional Facility. Once the indictment comes down, James says she recused herself. Being honest, what do they call it? Journalistic integrity, right? I didn't look into it to see if she just recused herself and she's appointing somebody else from the state AG office, or if the state of New York is out of it completely and the feds are going to look into it. I didn't look in that far, but I can tell you, right? We already seen reports where the feds are looking at it and they're going to whatever. Now, the feds, they're going to be patient, and the feds are vicious. They're going to bust you upside the head to the white meat, and they are going to meticulously put their thing together. But I'm telling you that whenever the indictments come down, they are going to say, hey, man, if I tell you other stuff, are you going to reduce my thing? And probably some of them will. I know there's always this joke from representing staff over the years. You kind of say, well, we always know the first officer to cooperate usually gets the best deal. Stuff like that, right? So, but it could be a few officers because there could be a bigger fish that they have in mind. And so, hey, you give us this information and we'll do that. And also, if there's AWs or wardens or other people that are involved in any type of misconduct that's going on in that prison, there's a good possibility that it's going to be brought up, even though it's not connected to the beating death of, I was going to say Tyree Nichols again, God rest his soul, but Robert, I can't remember his name right now, Robert Brooks, right? So anything that's connected to any type of corruption, whether it be concerning Robert Brooks or not, all of it is fair game because those officers are going to do whatever they can to reduce the sentence and to reduce their blow. I promise you, mark my words, save this video, obviously like, share, and subscribe it, but it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. That's just how it works. So if you don't get anything else from me, right? Any dirty officers out there that might be watching this video, or any rookies that feel enamored by this clique type of culture, or anybody that's, I think I might want to try to join one of these cliques. Trust me when I tell you, the thin blue wall of silence is not real when it comes down to the heavy duty stuff, which includes being sent away to prison for a long time and stripped away from your family. That is just how it works. I didn't make these rules. Obviously, I don't abide by those rules because I don't get down on those clicks and stuff because I already know where they're headed once they get caught. I just do my 8, hit the gate, I go home. I try to just, do my thing, right? But I'm telling you, it is going to happen. They're going to tell, and that's for any department and really kind of, well, I won't say any job, but definitely within, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, the regular job, if somebody's looking at losing their job, they're going to talk against somebody else or cooperate. And hey, Susie and Sally, they come in 30 minutes late every day, go after them and I'll provide you all the stuff you need. It's just about self-preservation. And I'm going to end on this, right? This whole thing, right? When you work in law enforcement, you're going up against, the bad guys, things of that nature, criminal organizations, gangs, and they have their code of silence. Gang members don't even follow the code of silence, right? The people that's committing the crimes, they're the ones that get jumped in or they do whatever oath and ritual to get in. They don't even keep quiet. They tell on each other all the time. So if the criminals that came up with this code, if they're going to tell all the time, then what do you think law enforcement officers are going to do? They're going to tell as well. So until the next one, holla at your boy. I don't know what happened. This is crazy. This is going to be a blooper. I thought I ended it, but I guess I didn't. That's funny. Let me end it the right. Okay. End recording. Holla at your boy.